My name is Amanda Wilson, 32 years old, and I never thought I'd see terror in my 6-year-old daughter's eyes as she watched her grandfather hit me so hard I collapsed. One moment I was standing in my childhood home, desperately explaining my financial situation, and the next I was on the floor with blood trickling down my face. Lily's screams still echo in my nightmares. We left that day with nowhere to go, 2 suitcases, and shattered trust. Before I dive into how my own parents threw me out with my 6-year-old daughter, let me know where you're watching from in the comments and hit subscribe if you've ever had to start over with nothing but determination. Life has a way of following unexpected paths. 3 years ago, I had what most would consider the American dream. A beautiful 4-bedroom house in a quiet suburban neighborhood in Rochester with a wraparound porch where I'd drink coffee every morning before work. My ex-husband Tyler and I both had stable jobs. I was a marketing coordinator at a healthcare company making $65,000 a year, while he worked in financial services bringing in nearly 6 figures. We had a healthy savings account, took annual vacations to places like Cabo and the Bahamas, and our daughter Lily attended an excellent private preschool where she was thriving. Looking back, I realized I had created a mental checklist of what success looked like, and I believed I had methodically checked every box. The first crack in this perfect picture appeared on an ordinary Tuesday evening. I came home early from a business dinner that had been canceled last minute. The house was quiet except for unusual sounds coming from our bedroom upstairs. I still remember the feeling of my stomach dropping as I climbed those stairs, each step heavier than the last. When I opened the door, there was Tyler in our marriage bed with Brittany, a coworker he had mentioned casually several times before. The look on his face wasn't even shock or shame. It was annoyance at being interrupted. "You weren't supposed to be home until 8, he said, as if I was the one who had done something wrong. The following months became a blur of lawyer meetings, mediation sessions, and financial negotiations. Tyler fought viciously for every asset, leveraging his connections in the financial world and hiring an aggressive attorney who specialized in protecting the higher-earning spouse. Despite having contributed equally to our marriage and being Lily's primary caretaker, I watched our joint savings drain away into legal fees, while Tyler managed to shield much of his personal accounts and investments. The final settlement left me with almost nothing. We had to sell the house due to Tyler's insistence, but after paying off our remaining mortgage and splitting what little equity we had, my portion barely covered 3 months of rent in a decent apartment. Child support was established, but Tyler immediately began finding ways to delay payments, claiming business downturns and temporary financial hardships that his Instagram posts of golf trips and expensive dinners contradicted. With my savings depleted by legal fees, inconsistent child support, and Rochester's surprisingly expensive rental market, I found myself facing the unthinkable. At 32 years old, I needed to ask my parents if my daughter and I could move in with them temporarily. My parents, Barbara and Richard Campbell, lived in the same 3-bedroom house they had owned for 30 years. It was the house I grew up in, located in a middle-class neighborhood about 40 minutes outside the city. When I called my mother to explain the situation, her response was better than I had feared. "Of course you can come stay with us, honey. Family takes care of family," she said, though I detected a hint of something else in her voice. Disappointment, perhaps, or judgment. My parents had been married for 38 years and came from a generation where divorce was considered a personal failure, particularly for women. They had never liked Tyler much, but they had also never approved of my decision to marry him without a more substantial prenuptial agreement. In their minds, a woman should always protect herself, but also do everything possible to make a marriage work. It was a contradictory position that reflected their complicated views on relationships. When Lily and I moved into my old childhood bedroom, the initial welcome was warm enough. My mother had prepared the room with fresh linens and cleared space in the closet. My father had set up a small desk where Lily could do her schoolwork. For the first week, it felt like a safe landing spot amid the chaos my life had become. But subtle tensions emerged quickly. My mother would make small comments about how, in her day, women figured out how to keep their marriages together. My father would sigh heavily whenever I mentioned difficulties with Tyler or child support. Neither of them said it outright, but their implication was clear. I had somehow failed at life, and now I was disrupting theirs. Finding a new job became my top priority, but the marketing industry had changed significantly since I'd started at my previous company 7 years earlier. Many interviews ended with the same response. We're looking for someone with more current experience with digital platforms. The positions I was qualified for offered significantly lower salaries than what I had been making, while the cost of living continued to climb. Meanwhile, Lily was struggling to adjust to her new reality. She had to change schools mid-year, leaving behind friends she'd known since she was 3. She couldn't understand why we weren't in our house anymore, or why she only saw her father every other weekend. At night, she would often climb into bed with me, asking when we could go home. "We'll have our own place again soon, sweetheart," I promised her night after night, trying to believe it myself. Despite these challenges, I remained determined. I took online courses to update my digital marketing skills while applying for jobs during the day. I picked up freelance projects that paid barely minimum wage, but gave me recent work examples. I cut every possible expense, selling my newer car for an older model to eliminate car payments, canceling subscriptions, and buying Lily's clothes from thrift stores instead of the boutiques we used to frequent. I contributed what I could to my parents' household, buying groceries, cooking meals, handling household chores, and giving them a small amount for utilities each month. But it was clear from their expressions and whispered conversations that they thought I wasn't doing enough. As weeks turned into months, my mother's initially subtle judgment became increasingly overt. She would point out job listings in fields completely unrelated to my experience, suggesting I wasn't trying hard enough because I wouldn't consider completely starting over in a new industry at entry-level wages. She questioned every purchase I made, from a needed pair of work shoes for interviews to school supplies for Lily. "You know, Amanda, when I was your age, I worked 2 jobs to make ends meet," she would say, conveniently forgetting that she never had to manage a young child alone while doing so, and that wages relative to living costs were completely different in her day. My father, who had always been more passive in family conflicts, began to echo my mother's sentiments. "Barbara's not wrong, you know," he would add after one of her lectures. "You need to be more practical about your situation." Their growing resentment created an atmosphere of constant tension. I began to feel like an unwelcome guest rather than family, and worse, I could see how it was affecting Lily. My bright, outgoing child became quieter, more cautious, especially around her grandparents. She would whisper questions to me instead of speaking normally, as if afraid of drawing attention to herself. This wasn't the safe harbor we needed while rebuilding our lives. It was becoming another storm to weather. 3 months into our stay, the atmosphere in my parents' house had transformed from subtly uncomfortable to openly hostile. Every morning began with my mother's scrutiny as I prepared Lily for school and myself for job hunting. "You're letting her have sugary cereal again?" Barbara would comment while watching me pour Lily's breakfast. "No wonder she can't sit still in class." In my day, children ate proper food and showed proper respect. These criticisms extended to every aspect of our lives. My parenting choices, my job search strategy, even the way I folded laundry became targets for her disapproval. Richard, my father, rarely intervened directly. Instead, he would retreat behind his newspaper or suddenly remember yard work that needed immediate attention. His silence spoke volumes. After years of marriage to Barbara, he had perfected the art of conflict avoidance, but his occasional nods of agreement during her tirades made his position clear. He wanted us gone too, just without the confrontation of saying so directly. Financial tensions continued to mount despite my best efforts. I had found part-time work as a content creator for a small marketing firm, but the $25 per hour for 20 hours weekly barely covered Lily's school expenses, my car insurance, phone bill, and the modest contribution to household expenses that I insisted on paying. Any time I spent money on anything beyond absolute necessities, Barbara noticed and commented, "New shoes, Amanda? Must be nice to have disposable income while living rent-free," she remarked when I replaced my completely worn-out interview pumps with an affordable pair from the clearance rack. I tried explaining that maintaining a professional appearance was essential for interviews, but she dismissed this with a wave of her hand. People in real financial trouble don't worry about fashion. Meanwhile, I had a promising interview with Meridian Healthcare for a marketing manager position. The interview process went through 4 rounds, each more encouraging than the last. The salary they discussed would allow Lily and me to move into our own place within a month of starting. I began cautiously researching apartments, hoping to have good news to share soon. But tensions reached a new peak during Lily's 6th birthday. I had saved carefully to throw her a small celebration, inviting a few friends from her new school and planning simple activities in my parents' backyard. Barbara, however, had different ideas. "This is far too modest for my only grandchild," she declared, taking over the planning entirely. She invited extended family members I barely spoke to, ordered an elaborate cake that cost more than our weekly grocery budget, and purchased expensive presents that made my carefully chosen art supplies look inadequate. When I expressed concern about the cost and scale, she dismissed me. "I'm doing what you should be doing if you had managed your life properly," she said within Lily's earshot. During the party, Barbara consistently undermined my authority as a parent. When I said Lily should wait until after dinner for cake, Barbara immediately served her a slice. When I suggested opening presents later, Barbara encouraged her to tear into them right away. Each time Lily looked at me with confusion, uncertain whose instructions to follow, my heart sank further. That evening, after putting an overstimulated and sugar-crashed Lily to bed, I overheard my parents in the kitchen. "How long do you think this situation will continue?" my father asked. "It's been 3 months already." "She's taking advantage, Richard," my mother replied. "She's comfortable here. Why would she leave? Free childcare, free housing. She's not trying hard enough to stand on her own 2 feet." Their words stung like physical blows. Every day, I was applying for jobs, taking skill-building courses, networking, and trying to be a good parent while navigating the emotional aftermath of my divorce. The suggestion that I was somehow enjoying this dependent position or not working hard enough to change it felt profoundly unfair. The next morning, when Barbara criticized my parenting in front of Lily, suggesting that her reluctance to eat breakfast was due to my permissive parenting style, something inside me snapped. "Mom, could we please discuss your concerns about my parenting privately, not in front of Lily?" I asked, keeping my voice deliberately calm. "Don't tell me how to speak in my own house," she retorted. "If you don't like my opinions, perhaps you should find somewhere else to live." The tension in the room was palpable. Lily stopped eating entirely, her small face crumpling as she sensed the conflict. "It's okay, sweetie," I assured her. "Grandma and I are just having a grown-up discussion." "No, she should hear this," Barbara continued. "Lily needs to understand that actions have consequences. Your mother made choices that led to this situation, and now we're all dealing with those consequences." I excused myself and Lily from the table, fighting back tears as I helped her finish getting ready for school. In the car, she asked a question that broke my heart. "Mommy, does Grandma not like us anymore? Did I do something wrong?" "No, baby," I assured her. "Grandma and Grandpa love us very much. Sometimes grown-ups get frustrated and say things they don't really mean. You didn't do anything wrong at all." But the truth was more complicated. My parents did love us, but their love came with conditions I hadn't recognized until now. Conditions of conformity to their expectations and deference to their authority, even as a grown woman with my own child. The incident left me feeling increasingly desperate. My friend Jessica, who had been supportive throughout my divorce, offered what help she could: occasional babysitting, emotional support, job leads. But with her 1-bedroom apartment and demanding work schedule, she couldn't provide housing. "I wish I could take you both in," she said during one of our coffee meetups. "But there's barely room for me in my place." "I understand," I assured her. "Just having someone who believes in me helps more than you know." As I drove home that evening, I noticed Lily's increasing withdrawal. Once chatty and exuberant, She had become quiet and watchful, a small observer of adult tensions she couldn't fully comprehend, but definitely felt. Her teacher had emailed me about her decreased participation in class, and twice that week, she had asked to stay home from school with vague complaints of stomachaches that seemed to disappear once I agreed she could remain with me rather than go to my parents' house after school. The weight of failure pressed down on me daily. Failure to provide stability for my daughter, failure to quickly reestablish our independence, and apparently, failure to meet my parents' expectations of proper gratitude for their increasingly begrudging help. Despite working constantly toward solutions, I felt trapped in a situation that was deteriorating by the day, with my daughter's well-being hanging in the balance. 5 months into our stay, what had started as an uncomfortable living arrangement had deteriorated into an emotionally toxic environment. The promising job opportunity at Meridian Healthcare had materialized into an official offer, but with a start date 5 weeks away due to the company's quarterly onboarding schedule. When I shared this news with my parents, hoping they would be relieved to have a definite end date to our stay, their reaction was unexpectedly negative. 5 more weeks? Barbara exclaimed over dinner. That's more than a month of continuing to support you. And how do we know this job will even work out? Your track record isn't exactly inspiring confidence these days, Amanda. Each of her words felt like a small cut. I had been transparent about my job search from the beginning, sharing both disappointments and progress. This was the first solid offer with a salary that would actually support Lily and me independently, yet instead of celebration, I received skepticism and resentment. I've accepted the position, Mom. The salary is good, and I've already started looking at apartments within my budget. We'll be out of your hair before you know it. We've heard these promises before, Richard chimed in, surprising me with his direct criticism. Usually, he let Barbara take the lead in confrontations. First it was just a few weeks, then just a couple of months. Now it's just 5 more weeks. The goalposts keep moving. Their united front felt like a betrayal. I had never promised a specific timeline because the job market and my financial situation were unpredictable. I had only promised to work diligently toward independence, which I was doing. Meanwhile, Lily's emotional state continued to deteriorate. She began having nightmares, waking up crying several times a week. Her pediatrician had noticed weight loss during her annual checkup and asked pointed questions about stress at home. The school counselor had called to discuss Lily's increasing anxiety behaviors, nail-biting, hair twirling, and reluctance to participate in group activities. Children are sensitive barometers of family tension, the counselor had explained gently. They absorb the emotional atmosphere around them, even when adults think they're hiding their conflicts. I knew she was right. Despite my best efforts to shield Lily from the growing hostility, children sense emotional undercurrents. Every tense silence at the dinner table, every abruptly ended conversation when she entered a room, every forced smile and carefully modulated voice communicated that something was wrong. As if the home situation wasn't stressful enough, Tyler chose this moment to inform me that he was reducing his child support payments. He claimed financial hardship due to investment losses, though his social media showed him vacationing in Aspen with Brittany, now apparently his girlfriend. It's temporary, he assured me over the phone. Just until some investments rebound. Maybe 3 or 4 months. Tyler, I'm counting on that money for Lily's basic needs, I argued, trying to keep my voice down so my parents wouldn't overhear. You're living with your parents rent-free, he replied dismissively. It's not like you have major expenses right now. I wanted to explain how humiliating and precarious our living situation had become, how every day felt like walking on eggshells, but I knew he wouldn't care. Our daughter was fed and housed, and in his mind, that was sufficient. The reduced child support meant delaying my plans to secure an apartment immediately after starting the new job. I would need at least 2 paychecks to cover the security deposit and first month's rent, pushing our move-out date further away. The thought of telling my parents about this delay filled me with dread. Before I could figure out how to address the situation, another crisis emerged. While Lily and I were at her school's parent-teacher conference, my mother took it upon herself to organize our shared bedroom. When we returned, I found my personal financial documents spread across the bed, along with receipts and bank statements. "What is this?" I asked, stunned by the invasion of privacy. Barbara stood in the doorway, arms crossed. "I was cleaning and came across your paperwork. I'm concerned about your spending habits, Amanda. I saw charges for a restaurant last week and a coffee shop almost every day. If you're so desperate for money, perhaps luxury purchases shouldn't be on your agenda." The restaurant had been a $10 sandwich shop lunch during a job interview that ran through the afternoon. The coffee shop charges were from the only place with reliable Wi-Fi where I could work on freelance projects while Lily was at school, the price of using their space for hours being a $2 cup of coffee. Neither qualified as luxuries in any reasonable person's definition. "You went through my personal financial records?" I asked, struggling to keep my voice steady as Lily watched from behind me. "This is my house. I have a right to know what's happening under my roof, especially when it affects me financially." The conversation deteriorated from there, with Barbara insisting that her invasion was justified and my objections proving that I had something to hide. When I suggested that adults deserve privacy regardless of their living situation, Richard joined in, backing his wife as always. "Your mother is just concerned about your future," he said. "Maybe a little more transparency would help build trust." The irony of being lectured about trust by people who had just violated my privacy was almost too much to bear. I managed to end the conversation only because Lily was present, promising to discuss it later when little ears weren't listening. That night, after Lily finally fell asleep, I sat in the bathroom, the only private space available to me, and tried to formulate a plan. With 5 weeks until my job started and reduced child support, immediate independence seemed impossible. I considered borrowing money from Jessica, but knew her own finances were tight. I researched extended stay hotels, but their weekly rates would deplete my savings before I even started working. I was trapped between financial impossibility and emotional unsustainability. Something had to give, but I couldn't see a solution that didn't put Lily's stability at further risk. The final straw came 3 days later. Lily had been working on an art project for school, a diorama depicting my family that she had poured her heart into, carefully gluing small handmade figures representing herself, me, her grandparents, and even Tyler inside a shoebox she had painted and decorated. She had worked on it for days, and it was due the following morning. When we returned from grocery shopping, another point of contention, as Barbara criticized both my food choices and spending, the diorama was gone. After searching frantically, I found Lily's project in the outdoor trash bin, damaged beyond repair by coffee grounds and kitchen waste. Lily burst into tears when she saw it, inconsolable at the destruction of her hard work. When I confronted my mother, her response was chilling in its casualness. "Oh, I thought it was just trash. It was sitting on the counter where I needed to prepare dinner. Besides, it wasn't very well made. Her teacher would probably have given her a poor grade anyway." In that moment, looking at my daughter's devastated face and my mother's unmoved expression, I knew we had reached a breaking point. What I didn't realize was how explosive that breaking point would become. The morning that changed everything began with unexpected hope. I woke early, unable to sleep after staying up late helping Lily recreate a simplified version of her diorama. Checking my email before anyone else was awake, I found a message from Meridian Healthcare's HR department. Due to an unexpected staff departure, they wanted to know if I could start in 1 week rather than 5. The position came with the same salary we had discussed, $60,000 annually, enough for Lily and me to live modestly, but independently. My heart raced with relief and excitement. This was the breakthrough we needed, accelerating our timeline for moving out and establishing our own home. I quickly responded, confirming my availability and expressing gratitude for the opportunity. As I prepared breakfast, I felt lighter than I had in months. The path forward was finally clear, 1 week of managing the current situation, then the beginning of our new life. I decided to share the good news with my parents, hoping it might ease tensions during our final days together. Barbara entered the kitchen as I was pouring Lily's cereal, her expression already set in its now familiar disapproval. "Good morning, Mom," I said, attempting cheerfulness. "I have some great news. Meridian called my start date forward. I'll be beginning next Monday instead of next month." Instead of the relief or congratulations I had hoped for, Barbara's face remained impassive. "Well, it's about time something worked out," she said flatly. "Though I'll believe it when I see the paycheck. You've had promising opportunities before." Her dismissal of my achievement stung, but I was determined to maintain a positive atmosphere for Lily's sake. "It's definite this time. I've already accepted formally and completed most of the paperwork. And the salary will definitely support us in our own place." Barbara merely nodded and began making her own breakfast, turning her back to me in what felt like a deliberate gesture of disinterest. The silence stretched uncomfortably as Lily ate her cereal, her eyes darting between us as they always did during tense moments. As if on cue, Lily's small hand accidentally knocked over her juice glass, sending orange liquid spreading across the table and dripping onto the floor. But worse, some splashed onto the antique lace tablecloth Barbara had inherited from her mother, a family heirloom she treasured.
"I'm sorry, Grandma."
Lily cried immediately, her face crumpling in anticipation of the reaction. Barbara turned, saw the spreading stain, and her expression transformed from cool indifference to fury in an instant. "That tablecloth is over 70 years old," she shouted, rushing toward the table. "It was my mother's and her mother's before that. Do you have any idea what you've done?" Lily shrank back in her chair, tears welling in her eyes. I moved quickly to stand between them, grabbing paper towels to blot the spill. "It was an accident, Mom. We can get it cleaned professionally," I said, trying to keep my voice calm while shielding Lily. "Professional cleaning? With what money?" Barbara's voice rose higher. "You can barely feed yourselves without our help, and now you're destroying irreplaceable family heirlooms." "It's just a tablecloth," I said, immediately recognizing my mistake. "Just a tablecloth?" Her face flushed with anger. "That shows exactly how little respect you have for this family and this home. You've been nothing but a burden since you arrived, Amanda. A burden we've carried without complaint while you take your time finding a job that meets your standards." The injustice of her characterization broke something in me. 5 months of swallowing criticism, of protecting Lily from the full force of their disapproval, of working tirelessly while being treated like a willful teenager instead of an adult handling a difficult transition. It all came rushing to the surface. "Without complaint? You've done nothing but complain since we arrived. Every day, every meal, every decision I make is wrong in your eyes. I'm doing everything humanly possible to get us back on our feet after losing almost everything in the divorce." Barbara's eyes narrowed. "Perhaps if you'd been a better wife, there wouldn't have been a divorce in the first place. Your generation gives up at the first sign of trouble." The cruelty of blaming me for Tyler's infidelity left me momentarily speechless. Before I could respond, we heard the front door open and close, my father returning from his morning walk. Richard entered the kitchen, immediately sensing the charged atmosphere. "What's going on here?" Barbara turned to him, tears now streaming down her face in what seemed like a calculated performance. "Amanda is allowing Lily to destroy our things while lecturing me about how I should respond. The Thornton tablecloth is ruined." Richard's face hardened as he surveyed the scene. The stained tablecloth, Lily's tearful face, my protective stance, and Barbara's distress. In that moment, I saw him make the same choice he had made throughout their marriage, his wife's side, regardless of the situation. "This has gone on long enough," he said, his voice quiet but hard. "We've opened our home to you, supported you through this difficulty, and this is the gratitude we receive? Disrespect and destruction of family heirlooms. It was an accident, Dad. Lily is 6 years old. Children spill things. And I've shown nothing but gratitude for your help, despite the constant criticism and undermining of my parenting." Barbara stepped forward, her voice rising to a shout. "Pay rent or get out." We're not running a charity here, and we're certainly not obligated to support a grown woman who can't manage her own life. I told you I got the job. I start next week, and we'll be out of here as soon as I get my first paycheck. After everything that's happened, do you really think we want to stay where we're so clearly unwelcome? Richard moved closer, his presence suddenly intimidating in the small kitchen. Your mother has been more than patient. We're not asking for back rent, just some basic respect and consideration. Respect? You want to talk about respect? My voice rose despite my efforts to remain calm. Was it respectful to go through my financial papers? Was it respectful to throw away Lily's school project? Was it respectful to tell her that her artwork wasn't good enough? You've shown us nothing but contempt for months. Richard's face flushed dark red. Don't you dare speak to us that way in our own home. Your mother has done nothing but try to help you, and this is how you repay her. Help me? By constantly telling me what a failure I am? By making Lily feel like she's walking on eggshells in her own grandparents' home? That's not help, Dad. That's emotional abuse. The word abuse seemed to trigger something in my father. His hand moved so quickly, I didn't have time to react. The slap connected with my left cheek with stunning force, knocking me sideways. I lost my balance, my temple connecting with the corner of the kitchen counter as I fell. I hit the floor hard, momentarily dazed. Warm wetness trickled down my face, blood from where my head had struck the counter edge. The kitchen fell silent except for Lily's terrified screams as she witnessed her grandfather's violence. "Mommy," she cried, rushing to where I lay on the linoleum. "Mommy, you're bleeding." Time seemed suspended as we all processed what had just happened. Richard stood frozen, looking at his hand as if it belonged to someone else. Barbara remained where she was, making no move to help me or comfort Lily. With shaking hands, I touched my temple, my fingers coming away red. The cut wasn't deep, but head wounds bleed profusely. More than the physical pain, though, was the shock of violation. My own father had struck me with enough force to knock me down, in front of my child. Lily's continued cries broke the frozen moment. I pushed myself up, fighting dizziness, and pulled her into my arms. "It's okay, baby." "I'm okay," I whispered, though we both knew it was a lie. Richard finally spoke, his voice strangled. "Amanda, I didn't mean to—" I cut him off, suddenly calm with the clarity of absolute certainty. "We're leaving."
Now.
"Don't be ridiculous," Barbara said, finally moving forward. "You're bleeding. Let me get the first aid kit." "Don't touch me," I said, my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me. "Lily, sweetheart, we need to go to our room and pack some things. Can you be my big helper?" Lily nodded, her small face still tear-streaked but resolute. She took my hand and we walked past my parents without another word, leaving them standing in the kitchen surrounded by the aftermath of violence. In our shared bedroom, I moved with mechanical efficiency, grabbing our suitcases and filling them with essentials, clothes, toiletries, Lily's favorite stuffed animals, my laptop and job documents, our identification papers. Lily followed my lead silently, bringing me items when asked, her eyes never leaving my bleeding face. "Where are we going, Mommy?" she finally asked as I zipped the second suitcase. The question momentarily stopped me. Where were we going? We had no apartment waiting, no hotel reservation, barely enough savings to last until my first paycheck. But the answer was clear nonetheless. Somewhere safe, sweetheart. Somewhere where no one will hurt us or make us feel bad. I helped Lily into her jacket, grabbed our suitcases, and led her back through the house. My parents stood in the living room, watching our exodus with expressions that mixed shock, anger, and perhaps a dawning realization of what had transpired. "Amanda, this is unnecessary," my mother said. "Your father lost his temper, but you provoked him. Let's all calm down and discuss this rationally." The victim blaming was the final confirmation that leaving was our only option. There's nothing to discuss. No one who hits another person in anger has the right to demand they stay for more abuse. "Where will you go?" my father asked, his voice smaller than I'd ever heard it. That's no longer your concern, I replied, though I had no answer myself. As we reached the front door, I turned to look at them one last time. These people who had raised me, who I had trusted to help us in our time of need, who had ultimately betrayed that trust in the most fundamental way. I never thought I'd have to protect my daughter from her own grandparents, I said quietly. But that's exactly what I'm doing right now. With those words, Lily and I walked out the door, leaving behind not just a house, but the illusion of family safety I had clung to throughout my adult life. As I helped Lily into the car, blood still trickling down my face, I felt simultaneously terrified and resolute. We had nowhere to go, but anywhere was better than where we had been. The moment the car doors closed, the facade of composure I had maintained for Lily's sake began to crumble. My hand shook so badly, I could barely insert the key into the ignition. The cut on my temple throbbed, blood occasionally dripping despite my attempts to stanch it with tissues from the glove compartment. Lily sat quietly in her booster seat, her face pale and serious beyond her 6 years. Your head is still bleeding, Mommy, she observed, her voice small. It's okay, sweetheart. Head cuts just bleed a lot even when they're not serious, I explained, trying to sound confident while pressing more tissues against my temple. I pulled out of my parents' driveway for what I knew would be the last time, with no destination programmed into the GPS. 2 blocks away, I pulled over, no longer able to see clearly through my tears. The reality of our situation crashed down like a physical weight. We were effectively homeless, with limited funds, nowhere to go, and I was injured. Lily unbuckled her seatbelt and climbed into the front passenger seat, wrapping her small arms around me as I sobbed. Don't cry, Mommy. We'll be okay, without Grandma and Grandpa. Her attempt at comfort broke my heart anew. A child should never have to console a parent in crisis, yet here was my daughter, showing more emotional maturity than the adults who had just thrown us out. When I could breathe normally again, I made the only call that seemed possible, to Jessica, my closest friend. Jess, I'm so sorry to ask this, I began, my voice still unsteady. But Lily and I need a place to stay. Just for a night or two until I figure something out. What happened? She asked, concern evident in her voice. Are you okay? You sound like you've been crying. The story spilled out in disjointed pieces, the confrontation, my father's violence, our hasty departure. Jessica's gasps of shock punctuated my narrative. Come over right now, she said when I finished. My couch is yours for as long as you need it. Do you need medical attention? That head injury sounds serious. I think I need stitches, I admitted, touching the still bleeding cut. But I don't want to frighten Lily more than she already is. I'll meet you at urgent care, Jessica decided. I'll help with Lily while you get treated. Then you're both coming home with me. Jessica's decisiveness was exactly what I needed in that moment, someone else taking charge when I felt incapable of making another decision. I set the GPS for the nearest urgent care center and tried to prepare Lily for what would happen. We need to have a doctor look at Mommy's cut, I explained. Aunt Jessica will meet us there and help take care of you while the doctor helps me. Will they give you a Band-Aid? Lily asked, her concept of medical treatment endearingly simple. Maybe something a little bigger than a Band-Aid. I smiled weakly. But it won't take long. At urgent care, Jessica was already waiting in the parking lot. She gasped when she saw my face, the left side now crusted with dried blood from temple to jaw. Oh my God, Amanda, she whispered, careful to keep her voice light in front of Lily. Your father did this? I nodded slightly, unable to speak the affirmation aloud. The betrayal still felt too raw, too incomprehensible. Inside, the triage nurse took one look at my injury and the circumstances, a woman with a head wound accompanied by a child and friend, no husband or family member present, and her professional demeanor took on a different quality. She separated me briefly from Lily, who went with Jessica to the waiting room play area and asked direct questions. Ma'am, are you safe right now? Is the person who caused this injury present in your life? I explained that I had left the situation and had no intention of returning. When she asked if I wanted to file a police report, I hesitated. The thought of formally accusing my father of assault, of potentially seeing him arrested, felt overwhelming. I just want to get stitched up and focus on finding housing for my daughter and me, I told her. She nodded, respecting my decision while sliding a pamphlet for domestic violence resources into my discharge paperwork. These might be helpful, she said quietly. They have emergency housing options for situations exactly like yours. The doctor confirmed what I had suspected. The cut required stitches, 5 of them to close the wound cleanly. As the local anesthetic was injected and the sutures placed, I stared at the ceiling tiles, trying to process how quickly life could change. This morning, I had been celebrating a job offer. Now I was homeless, injured, and separated from my family of origin, perhaps permanently. When we arrived at Jessica's one-bedroom apartment, the practical challenges of our new reality became immediately apparent. Her small living room barely accommodated a love seat and coffee table. There was no space for 2 people to sleep comfortably, let alone store our hastily packed belongings. "I'll take the floor. You and Lily can have the couch," Jessica offered, already gathering spare blankets from her linen closet. "Absolutely not. We've imposed enough. Lily and I can manage on the couch," I insisted. That first night was nearly sleepless. Lily finally dozed off around 11, curled against me on the narrow couch, but I remained awake, staring at the unfamiliar ceiling. My temple throbbed despite the pain medication, but the physical discomfort paled compared to the emotional turmoil. Anger, betrayal, fear, shame, and determination cycled through me in exhausting waves. How could my father have struck me? How could my mother have stood by, offering no help, then blamed me for provoking the violence? What would I tell Lily about her grandparents now? How would I create stability for her when I felt so utterly destabilized myself? Morning brought practical concerns to the forefront. We needed the rest of our belongings from my parents' house: clothes, school supplies, important documents. The thought of returning there made me physically ill, but necessity overrode fear. Jessica's boyfriend Michael, a gentle giant of a man who worked as a physical therapist, offered to help. "I'll go with you," he said over breakfast. "Your parents won't try anything with me there." His presence was reassuring as we drove back to the house. Barbara answered the door, her expression tightening when she saw me. The bruising around my stitched temple had bloomed overnight into vivid purple, making the injury impossible to ignore. "We're here for Amanda and Lily's things," Michael stated simply, his 6'3" frame blocking the doorway. "Richard isn't home," Barbara said, as if that information should change our purpose. "Good," I replied, finding my voice. "We'll be quick." She stepped aside wordlessly, watching as we efficiently gathered the belongings we couldn't fit in our initial escape: Lily's school backpack, my professional clothes, the small keepsakes that connected us to happier times. Michael made multiple trips to the car while I directed what needed to be taken. In Lily's rush to grab her treasured possessions, something was overlooked: Brownie, the well-worn teddy bear she had slept with since infancy. We wouldn't discover this oversight until bedtime, when her panicked realization would trigger the first of many nightmares. Before leaving, I faced my mother one last time. "I don't expect you to understand what happened yesterday or your role in it. But I want you to know that Lily and I are safe, and we'll be okay without your help." Barbara's face remained impassive. "You've always had a flair for drama, Amanda. When you're ready to discuss this reasonably, without accusations and theatrics, you know where to find us." Her dismissal of violence as drama confirmed everything I needed to know about the possibility of reconciliation. There would be no acknowledgement of wrongdoing, no genuine remorse, no accountability. Just as there had been no protection when I needed it most. Back at Jessica's apartment, I began the sobering task of financial assessment. My savings account contained just under $2,000, enough for first month's rent on a modest apartment, but not enough for the security deposit as well. My new job would start in 6 days, but the first paycheck wouldn't arrive for 2 weeks after that. The reduced child support from Tyler complicated matters further. When I called to update him on our situation, hoping the severity might prompt some financial consideration, his response was predictably self-centered. "That sounds really challenging, but I'm dealing with my own financial issues right now," he said smoothly. "Maybe your parents just need some space. Have you considered apologizing?" The suggestion that I should apologize to people who had thrown us out and physically assaulted me was so absurd I couldn't even respond. I ended the call without further discussion. Jessica and Michael were incredibly supportive, insisting we stay with them until I received my first paycheck. But their small apartment was already straining under the addition of 2 people. Michael technically lived elsewhere but was staying over to help, creating a cramped environment that stressed everyone despite best intentions. "We need to look at all options," Jessica said gently on our 3rd night there. "What about a women's shelter temporarily? Just until your job starts." The suggestion hit a nerve. A shelter represented a level of crisis I wasn't ready to acknowledge, a public declaration of destitution and vulnerability. My pride rebelled against the idea, though I knew it might be the most practical solution. "Let me see what else I can find first," I said, already researching extended stay hotels and short-term rentals on my laptop. The options were disheartening. The cheapest extended stay hotel would consume my entire savings before I received my first paycheck. Short-term rentals required substantial deposits and verification of income one couldn't yet provide. Traditional apartments wanted credit checks, employment verification, and first and last month's rent plus security. As Lily slept restlessly beside me on the couch that night, I finally accepted that pride was a luxury I couldn't afford. My daughter's stability mattered more than my discomfort with accepting institutional help. The next morning, I called the number on the pamphlet the urgent care nurse had provided. "New Beginnings Transitional Housing," a warm voice answered. "How can I help you today?" "My name is Amanda," I began, my voice barely above a whisper. "My 6-year-old daughter and I need a place to stay. We left an unsafe situation, and I'm starting a new job soon, but we have nowhere to go until I can afford an apartment." "You've called the right place," the woman assured me. "Let's talk about how we can help." My first day at Meridian Healthcare arrived amid circumstances I could never have anticipated when accepting the position. Instead of commuting from my parents' suburban home as planned, I left from New Beginnings Transitional Housing, where Lily and I had been assigned a small but private room 3 days earlier. The facility was clean and secure, offering more dignity than I had expected, but it was unmistakably institutional. Shared bathrooms, scheduled mealtimes, and strict curfews reminded residents of our precarious circumstances. Lily had been quiet since our arrival, absorbing yet another major change with the resilience children somehow managed to summon. "You look beautiful, Mommy," she said that morning, watching me put on makeup to cover the still visible bruising around my stitches. I had chosen a hairstyle that partially concealed the injury, but nothing could completely hide the evidence of what had happened. "Thank you, sweetheart," I replied, kneeling to her level. "Remember, you'll be staying in the children's program today while I'm at work. Miss Tabitha said you'll get to do art projects and play with the other kids." Lily nodded solemnly. "Will the other kids know we're homeless?" The question stabbed at my heart. "We're not homeless, Lily. We have a temporary home while we wait for a new apartment. It's like a very long hotel stay." She seemed to accept this explanation, though I wondered what she truly understood about our situation. The shelter staff had been wonderful with her, especially the children's program coordinator, who had experience helping kids process family transitions and trauma. At Meridian Healthcare, I projected confidence I didn't feel, shaking hands firmly with new colleagues and expressing enthusiasm for the marketing campaigns I would be managing. No one needed to know I had spent the previous night on a narrow twin bed in a shelter, or that my professional wardrobe was currently stored in garbage bags in a shared closet. By mid-morning, however, I noticed my new coworker Shannon watching me with unusual attentiveness. During our lunch break, she approached my desk with gentle directness. "I hope this isn't overstepping," she began, But are you okay? That looks like it was a nasty injury. My hand automatically went to my temple, and I gave the practiced response I had prepared. Just a clumsy accident. I'm fine, thanks. Shannon's expression made it clear she didn't believe me, but she didn't press further. Instead, she invited me to join her for lunch in the break room, where our conversation shifted to work topics and office dynamics. As we were returning to our desks, she casually mentioned, "My sister was in an abusive relationship a few years ago. The hardest part for her wasn't even leaving. It was rebuilding after, finding housing with damaged credit and limited resources." The comment wasn't framed as a question, but the opening was clear. Something about Shannon's matter-of-fact tone, free of pity or judgment, broke through my carefully maintained facade. "My daughter and I are staying at New Beginnings until I can afford a place," I admitted quietly, ensuring no other colleagues were within earshot. Shannon's expression remained unchanged. No shock, no awkward sympathy, just a small nod of understanding. "My friend Denise manages some properties not far from here. She sometimes works with people in transition, especially single parents. Would you be interested in talking to her?" That simple offer, extended without fanfare or condescension, became the first step toward rebuilding our lives. Shannon arranged a meeting with Denise for the following evening at a coffee shop near the shelter. Denise turned out to be a practical woman in her 50s who managed several small apartment buildings for a local owner. "Shannon explained your situation," she said after brief introductions. "I have a one-bedroom unit available in a building about 15 minutes from your office. It's nothing fancy, older appliances, basic amenities, but it's clean, safe, and the neighborhood has a good elementary school." My heart leapt at the possibility, then immediately sank as I considered financial realities. I won't receive my first paycheck for another week and a half, and I don't have enough saved for security deposit plus first month's rent. Denise nodded, unsurprised. "The owner I work with allows payment plans for the deposit in certain circumstances. You'd pay first month's rent up front, then add $100 to each subsequent month until the deposit is covered. We'd need to verify your employment, of course." The arrangement sounded too good to be true. Why would the owner be willing to do that? He was raised by a single mother who struggled to find housing, Denise explained simply. Now that he's successful, this is his way of paying it forward. We've had very few problems with this approach. People who are given a chance tend to be exceptionally reliable tenants. 2 days later, after employment verification and a brief property tour, I signed a lease for our new apartment. The unit was indeed basic, beige walls, worn carpet, dated kitchen, but it represented independence and safety in a way that made these details irrelevant. Lily and I could move in immediately. The shelter staff helped us transport our limited belongings to the apartment. Standing in the empty living room after they left, the magnitude of starting completely over at 32 became overwhelmingly apparent. We had no furniture, minimal kitchenware, not even a shower curtain or bath towels. That evening, Lily and I ate takeout pizza sitting on the floor, using our suitcases as makeshift tables. "It's like camping inside," Lily declared, finding adventure where I saw only scarcity. The next challenge emerged when I needed to update Lily's school about our new address and situation. Sitting across from the principal and school counselor, I struggled to explain our circumstances without revealing too much of the trauma involved. "We've had a family situation that required us to move suddenly," I began cautiously. Marcus, the school counselor, gently interrupted. "Ms. Wilson, whatever information you share helps us support Lily appropriately. Everything remains confidential." Something about his professional kindness broke through my reserve. I found myself explaining the basic outline of what had happened, the conflict with my parents, the assault, our temporary stay at the shelter, and our recent move to an apartment. Instead of the judgment I feared, both educators responded with practical support. The principal connected me with a program that provided school supplies and backpacks. Marcus offered to check in with Lily regularly and suggested play therapy resources covered by my new insurance. "Children are remarkably resilient," he assured me. especially when they have a consistent, loving parent guiding them through difficulties. Lily is lucky to have you advocating for her so fiercely. His words were the first professional validation I'd received of my parenting since the divorce, a welcome contrast to my mother's constant criticism. Perhaps I wasn't failing Lily as dramatically as I had feared. Our first night in the apartment brought mixed emotions. The freedom of having our own space again was exhilarating, but once Lily fell asleep on our makeshift bed of blankets on the floor, the silence amplified my anxiety. Every unexpected building noise startled me. I checked the door lock repeatedly. When I finally drifted off, nightmares of falling and being unable to protect Lily jolted me awake repeatedly, heart racing and body drenched in sweat. These anxiety attacks continued nightly, always after Lily was asleep, as if my mind waited until it was safe to process the trauma we'd experienced. During daylight hours, I maintained functional composure, performing well at my new job and ensuring Lily's needs were met. But in the quiet darkness, the fear and vulnerability I suppressed would emerge with physical intensity. Financial challenges remained acute until my first paycheck arrived. I had depleted my savings for the first month's rent, leaving barely enough for groceries and gas to get to work. I calculated every expense meticulously, making impossible choices between equally important needs. Should I buy Lily new shoes for school or pay the electric bill? Purchase groceries or put gas in the car to get to work? The arrival of my first paycheck from Meridian brought overwhelming relief. Although modest after tax deductions, it represented the beginning of stability. I paid our most urgent bills and purchased a few essential furniture items from a secondhand store: a futon for the living room, a mattress and box spring that sat directly on the floor, and a small dining table with 2 chairs. An unexpected kindness emerged from my workplace when Shannon noticed me eating the same peanut butter sandwich for lunch several days in a row. Without drawing attention to our situation, she organized what she called an office warming collection. Colleagues contributed household items they no longer needed: dishes, towels, lamps, a coffee maker, even a television that someone had replaced with a newer model. "We all go through tough transitions," Shannon said as she helped deliver these items to our apartment. "Someday you'll be in a position to help someone else." As we arranged these secondhand treasures in our apartment, I considered the complex question of my parents. Barbara had called twice, leaving voicemails that managed to simultaneously express concern and justify their actions. "We're worried about you and Lily," she said in her most recent message. "Your father feels terrible about what happened, but you have to understand how provocative your behavior was. We should discuss this like adults." The implication that I shared responsibility for being assaulted triggered renewed anger, but also sadness at the recognition that they might never truly understand the gravity of what had occurred. I wasn't ready to respond, focusing instead on establishing stability for Lily. Through all this upheaval, Lily remained my touchstone. Children have an extraordinary capacity to find joy in small moments, even amid crisis. The first night we assembled our second-hand dining table, she declared it perfect for fancy dinner, setting it carefully with paper napkins and serving mac and cheese with the solemnity of a 5-star meal. "To our adventure house," she toasted, raising her plastic cup of apple juice. "To our adventure house," I echoed, marveling at her resilience and the unexpected journey that had led us here, to a sparsely furnished apartment that nonetheless represented safety, independence, and the beginning of our rebuilt life. 6 months after the day my father's hand connected with my face, Lily and I stood in our apartment, surveying the transformation. What had begun as an empty space with bare necessities had gradually evolved into a true home. Second-hand furniture, thoughtfully arranged, created cozy conversation areas. Framed artwork, mostly Lily's creations, added color to previously blank walls. Potted plants thrived on windowsills, lending life and freshness to each room. More important than these physical changes was the invisible but palpable sense of security that had taken root. This modest one-bedroom apartment had become a sanctuary where Lily and I could heal and grow without walking on eggshells or bracing for criticism. My professional life had stabilized beyond expectations. Meridian Healthcare valued my marketing expertise, and my 3-month performance review had resulted in positive feedback and the promise of advancement opportunities. My supervisor specifically praised my campaign for preventive care services, which had increased patient enrollment by 20%. "You have a gift for communicating complex information in accessible ways," she told me. "We're considering expanding your role to include management of our digital strategy team." This validation of my professional capabilities helped rebuild the confidence that had been eroded during months of my mother's cutting remarks about my career choices and work ethic. The salary increase that accompanied the expanded responsibilities would allow us to move to a slightly larger apartment when our lease ended, possibly one with 2 bedrooms, so Lily could have her own space. Lily's recovery had been more complex but equally remarkable. The first 2 months after leaving my parents' house, she had struggled with separation anxiety, becoming distressed whenever I was out of sight. Nightmares disrupted her sleep several times weekly, and she had reverted to thumb-sucking, a self-soothing behavior she had outgrown years earlier. With the help of Marcus, the school counselor, we found a play therapist named Dr. Abrams who specialized in childhood trauma. Initially skeptical about the effectiveness of therapy for someone so young, I was amazed to witness Lily's gradual transformation through their weekly sessions. Children often process trauma through play in ways they can't articulate verbally, Dr. Abrams explained during one of our parent consultations. Lily is working through her experiences of instability and witnessed violence by creating narratives where she has agency and control. The therapy, combined with the consistency of our new routine and environment, yielded noticeable improvements. The nightmares decreased in frequency, then largely subsided. Lily began forming friendships at school again, even requesting playdates with classmates. Her academic performance, which had suffered during our period of housing instability, returned to grade level and beyond. One of the most difficult aspects of our recovery involved navigating the complex relationship with my parents. After 2 months of limited contact, I had agreed to a carefully controlled reintroduction, primarily for Lily's benefit. We met in neutral locations, parks, child-friendly restaurants, once at a children's museum, always with clear time boundaries and my non-negotiable condition that conversations remain positive and present-focused. Richard's initial awkwardness around me was palpable. During our second meeting, while Lily was distracted by playground equipment, he attempted what I suppose he considered an apology. "I've never been a violent man," he said, staring at his hands. "What happened that day, it wasn't me. I don't know what came over me. But it was you, Dad," I replied evenly. "You made a choice in that moment, and it changed everything between us. I can't pretend it didn't happen or that it was some aberration that doesn't reflect who you really are." "What do you want from me, Amanda?" he asked, genuine confusion in his voice. "I've said I'm sorry. We've offered to help you financially. What more can I do?" His question revealed the fundamental disconnect. In his mind, an apology and money should erase the violence and emotional abuse. He couldn't grasp that trust, once broken so profoundly, couldn't be repaired with words alone or financial assistance that came with implicit strings attached. "I don't want anything from you," I explained. "I'm allowing these visits because Lily loves her grandparents and needs to know family relationships can heal. But healing takes time and consistent behavior change, not just apologies." Barbara struggled even more with the new boundaries. She continued to attempt criticism disguised as concern, though she was careful never to cross the lines I had clearly established. "Lily looks a bit thin," she might comment. "Are you sure she's eating enough protein?" Early in our reconciliation attempts, such remarks would have triggered defensive responses. Now, I simply acknowledged them without emotional engagement. "Her pediatrician is pleased with her growth curve, but thanks for your concern." This neutral response, neither accepting criticism nor escalating conflict, gradually diminished the frequency of her commentary. She seemed to realize that her previous methods of control no longer worked, though I doubted she fully understood why. Our most significant progress came through the unexpected support network that formed around us. Shannon from work introduced me to a single parents group that met weekly, providing both practical assistance and emotional validation. Through these meetings, I connected with other adults rebuilding lives after relationship breakdowns or family estrangements. The hardest part is accepting that the story you thought you were living isn't the story you're actually in, said Tanya, a group member who had left an abusive marriage 2 years earlier. Once you can grieve that lost narrative, you can start writing a new one. Her insight resonated deeply. I had been clinging to the story that family always supports family unconditionally, that parents are safe havens during crisis. Accepting the reality that my parents were limited, flawed humans who had prioritized their comfort over my safety was painful, but ultimately liberating. It allowed me to stop seeking their approval and focus instead on building a chosen family of supportive friends. My neighbor Rachel became an unexpected ally in this chosen family. A retired teacher in her 60s, she initially offered to watch Lily occasionally when my work schedule created childcare challenges. Over time, she became a surrogate grandmother figure, teaching Lily to bake cookies and tend to the small container garden on our shared patio. My own children live across the country, Rachel explained when I expressed gratitude for her involvement. Having Lily in my life brings me joy. You're not imposing by accepting help, you're allowing me to be part of a family again. Even my relationship with Tyler evolved towards something more functional. After months of erratic child support payments and minimal involvement, he seemed to register the significance of the changes in our lives. Perhaps comparing my parents' behavior to his own prompted some self-reflection, or maybe his relationship with Brittany had stabilized enough for him to think beyond immediate self-interest. Whatever the cause, he began meeting his financial obligations consistently and requested more regular visitation with Lily. During one exchange, he actually acknowledged my efforts. "You've done a good job with her through all this," he said awkwardly as Lily gathered her belongings after a weekend visit. "She seems happy, despite everything." Coming from Tyler, this qualified as effusive praise. I simply nodded, recognizing that co-parenting would always require accepting imperfect efforts and focusing on Lily's well-being rather than past grievances. Financial stability built slowly, but steadily. 6 months after starting at Meridian, I had established an emergency fund with enough to cover 1 month of expenses, a modest achievement that nonetheless represented significant progress from the financial precipice we had been teetering on. My credit score, damaged during the divorce and subsequent housing crisis, had begun to recover as I maintained consistent payment histories. Looking back on the journey from that blood-stained kitchen floor to our current stability, I recognized patterns I was determined not to repeat. The generational cycle of emotional control disguised as love, of conditional support requiring compliance and deference, would end with me. Lily would grow up understanding that love doesn't demand perfection or obedience, that true family, whether biological or chosen, supports growth rather than punishing independence. One evening, as Lily and I prepared dinner in our small kitchen, she asked a question that revealed her own processing of our experience. "Mommy, are you still mad at Grandma and Grandpa?" I paused, considering how to answer truthfully while remaining age-appropriate. "I'm not mad anymore, but I'm still sad about what happened. Sometimes people we love make big mistakes that change relationships forever. I'm trying to build a new kind of relationship with them that feels safe for both of us." She nodded seriously, stirring the pasta sauce with focused concentration. "Like when I broke Maddie's bracelet at school and she was really mad, but then we made a friendship contract so we could still be friends but with rules." Children's ability to find relevant parallels never ceases to amaze me. That's actually a really good comparison, sweetie. Sometimes we need new rules in relationships after trust is broken. "I'm glad we have our own home now," she added after a moment. "I like that nobody yells here." Her simple observation encompassed everything I had worked to achieve, not just physical shelter but emotional safety. Our apartment might be modest by conventional standards, but it provided the security and peace that no material advantage could replace. As we sat down to our simple meal, I reflected on the strength I had discovered through adversity. The woman who had arrived at New Beginnings transitional housing with stitches in her temple and a traumatized child had been desperate but determined. 6 months later, that determination had manifested as a stable home, promising career, and healing relationships. The journey wasn't complete. Recovery rarely follows a linear path, but the foundation was solid. "What are you thinking about, Mommy?" Lily asked, noticing my momentary introspection. "I'm thinking about how proud I am of us," I answered truthfully. "We've been through some really hard things, but we've stayed strong together." Lily grinned, revealing the gap where she'd recently lost a tooth. "We're a good team." "The best team," I agreed, reaching across to squeeze her hand. Our story wasn't the one I would have chosen or expected. From suburban comfort to shelter housing in the span of a year was never on my life plan. But within this unexpected narrative, I had discovered reservoirs of resilience I never knew I possessed and built connections based on authentic support rather than obligation. Most importantly, I had shown Lily that safety and dignity are non-negotiable rights, that love without respect isn't really love at all, and that sometimes the family we build matters more than the family we're born into. Have you ever had to rebuild your life or stand up to family members who weren't treating you right? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Sometimes knowing we're not alone in these difficult journeys can be incredibly healing. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to hear more stories of resilience and recovery. And remember, you deserve safety and respect in every relationship, blood relation or not. Thank you for listening, and I wish you strength on your own journey, whatever challenges you might be facing.